Hi again everyone, thanks for watching the first video. Here is part 2 of my carving progress with the snake that I showed you yesterday. So I'll switch over and you'll be able to see how far I got. Okay, so yesterday when I left off, I had my big thick snake and I did in fact cut it in half so that I had two halves. And when I cut it in half, usually what we do at the shop is we just mark it down the center and then cut a little bit off center, and then we get two sides like that. And then you can see this one is not really finished. And then I've done a little bit more work on this one. I've made it quite a bit smoother, a lot smaller. So I'm going to show you how I got to this using this one. And what I've done, I don't really need them to match. It's fine if they don't. I'm not too stressed about it. But what I did was I lined it up like this. And then I just used, you can either use a Sharpie or some kind of pen to kind of like mark off what material you still need to take off. So I still need to take off a little bit there. And for this, I'm going to be going back to my files. I'm going to be using a half round file. So this is flat on one side and rounded on the other side. And I'm just going to go in and start filing down some of these areas here. Now, if you have a lot of material to get rid of, you may want to use your larger file for this. If you want to be a little more careful about it, then you can go ahead and use the finer needle files. I trust myself, so I'm just going in with my big file to help me get rid of more material at a time. And I'm going to just show you that really quickly. Okay, so I've got my shape pretty roughed out now. And now you can maybe see here that the one on the left here is a little bit smoother, it's more rounded off, whereas this one here is still quite thick and blocky. So now I'm going to spend some time shaping that out. And for that, I'm still going to use my files. I'll again use the half round file. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of drag it across that outside corner to clip off the corner and start making it have a more rounded appearance. And this is kind of the nice thing of carving versus cutting something out of sheet metal, is that it is quite a bit easier for you to make things have more body and more of a 3D feel out of the wax, and it also takes so much less time to carve that in. So I'm just going to spend a little bit of time doing that now. Okay, so I just rounded off the corners a little bit. I don't know, maybe you can see that. And it still looks quite blocky, and it kind of looks a little bit flat on top as opposed to this one that looks a little bit more rounded. You might be able to see I've got more light bouncing off here. You also want to be pretty careful at this point because things are getting quite fragile, and so you have to be pretty cautious about how you're holding things. If you noticed in that previous video, I'm holding things always, my finger is in behind. It's really important. With a bigger piece, you might be able to support it on your bench pin here or off the side like that, but with something that's long and spindly like this, I definitely want to keep it protected at all times to make sure that it doesn't break on me. However, if it does, we can always stick it back together, as most of you know. And I just see one little area kind of in the neck here where it's looking a little lumpy, so I think I'm gonna fix that really quickly before I continue. What snake? Maybe it just ate a mouse. I was just thinking, what snake has a lumpy neck? One that just ate. Sorry for the graphic visual there. Okay, so that's a little bit better. Now what I'm going to do to smooth everything out is I'm going to use a little piece of drywall paper. So I've just torn off a little piece, and I actually like to kind of break it down a little bit more so that it gets really nice and flexible. And then I'm just gonna go in and start smoothing everything out everywhere. Okay, so these actually look very close now. I'm very happy with this, and you'll have noticed maybe at the end of that last little video, I switched over to a small piece of sandpaper just to get all the texture really nice and even, and make it even smoother. And now what I'm ready to do is I'm ready to start adding some texture in there intentionally. So I'm going to be adding some little lines. You can see I drew it on here. I'm going to be adding some little lines onto my snake to give like a little more definition to the piece, and also to give it a little more interest. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Just a quick note, I am going to be wearing my visor to do this so that I can see things really up close. And I'm also going to be using my X-Acto knife to cut in these little lines. There are a lot of things that you can use to cut into metal. You can use a sewing needle, you can use a sharp knife like this, you can use engraving tools, you can use a scribe. Lots of students of mine have used a scribe, and definitely if I was at the Devil's Workshop right now using the shop benches, then I would likely use an engraving tool because they're quite fine, and they have really good control. But this is my second best choice, just a good old X-Acto knife, which anyone has at home for craft purposes or otherwise. Okay, so I've zoomed in a little bit here, and you should be able to see some of the marks that I made. And I'm planning to do the same thing with the other one, but I'm gonna hold off on that for now. I'm pretty happy with this, and I think that these lines will take the silver blackening agent really nicely. Now, for those of you who don't have orange oil at home, I don't. The orange oil that I usually use is at the shop. And in the place of orange oil, what I would recommend is to put a little bit of dish soap, just a tiny bit, and then use an old toothbrush to scrub along your surface very gently, and that should get rid of all of those little pieces of wax that get stuck in there, and powdery, waxy stuff that covers up all of your work. So anyways, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and I can't wait to see what all of you create.